Welcome back to the show, everyone. Real pleasure to meet our next guest. He is author and Greenpeace co-founder. His book is called Confessions of a Greenpeace Dropout, The Making of a Sensible Environmentalist, and that is a term we will be talking about a lot with Dr. Patrick Moore. All right, Patrick, nice to see you. Thank you for coming in, first of all. The writing of this book, what spurred this? What was the reason to write it now?
Well, actually, when I left Greenpeace, that was over 20 years ago now, I did so determined to create an environmentalism that was more based on science and logic and not based on sensationalism and fear campaigns and misinformation like too much of environmentalism is today in my estimation. And 5 years ago I started writing this book, and it's actually taken that long, 20 years, to really bring it all to fruition.
Yeah.
And I think the timing is just right now, because I think a lot of people are realizing that we do need to work towards solutions on these problems.
Yeah.
There are nearly 7 billion people. We need food, energy, and materials every day to survive. We have to take those things from the environment. There's no other place to get them.
Where else do you get them?
Exactly. But sometimes taking those things from the environment causes damage. And so to me, sustainability and environmentalism is about trying to figure out how to get the stuff we need without causing so much damage, to reduce the damage that we cause.
Well, and it's fascinating because as you go through the evolution of Greenpeace, some really interesting things happened to it that altered the way that environmentalism was discussed. And the falling of the Berlin Wall, geopolitical changes, really had a strong effect on Greenpeace. And maybe talk about that and how that changed the movement a little bit and what it was about.
Well, the way I see it, by about the mid-1980s, see, we'd grown from a church basement here in Vancouver to a group with about 100 million a year coming in that 15-year period. It was a pretty wild ride.
Crazy.
And we had offices all over the world by this time, and we were involved in many campaigns simultaneously in many different countries.
Yeah.
But what happened is a majority of people gradually accepted all of the reasonable things we were saying. Stop the bomb, save the whales, reduce toxic waste emissions.
Yeah.
And you know, when a majority of people start agreeing with you, maybe it's time to stop hitting them over the head.
Yeah.
And sit down with them and try and figure out which way we should go here.
Yeah, and it's when an environmental movement became a political movement.
And well, that was the other side of it. Not only did many environmentalists who couldn't fathom the idea of sitting down in consensus process and trying to work with people, it was like up against the man for the rest of their lives,
Yeah.
perpetual revolutionaries.
Yeah.
And on the other hand, when the Berlin Wall came down, a lot of peaceniks moved into the environmental movement because there wasn't a peace movement anymore, and they brought their leftist politics with them. Basically,
anti-industry and
anti-corporatism, anti-capitalism, anti-industry, and basically learned to use green language in a way that really was cloaking an agenda that had more to do with anti-globalization and anti-capitalism than it did anything to do with science or ecology. And that is when I had to leave, because I'm a centrist politically. I
You're
believe
a scientist, which is really important.
Well, that was the other thing, is I found myself the only person on the Greenpeace International board. I'd been on that board since '79 when I helped create it, and then Greenpeace International basically became an umbrella for all the offices in the world.
Yeah.
And I had 4 other directors with me from various other countries. None of them had any formal education in science. They were either political activists or social activists or entrepreneurs looking for a career, smart people,
Yeah.
but they didn't have science. And they started to adopt positions in complex issues of chemistry and biology that I just couldn't accept.
Yeah.
So a whole bunch of things came together there. The extremism element, the politicization and the movement to the far left, and the adoption of positions that had no basis in science.
Well, I think maybe one of your most fascinating points, and it shouldn't be a light bulb moment thought, but it really is when you say that people aren't part of the problem. We are part of all of it. And there's been this demonization of humanity that's become part of the environmental movement. Like, we are the villains in this story of the Earth. And your point is that we aren't the villains. We are just part of the Earth.
Exactly. I mean, it's really unfortunate, because the primary lesson of ecology is that we are all one, that we're all interconnected. All life is part of a unified thing on this earth. We all came from the same place, and we're all part of it together. Instead, we're thought of as some kind of cancer on the face of the earth, or a scourge.
Something outside of the natural realm.
Yeah, that the earth would be better off without. People have written books about that, about how much more wonderful nature would be if there were no people on the earth.
That's crazy.
I mean, it's just nuts. But there's a lot of people, I think it's a form of self-loathing.
Yeah.
And maybe it's even an internalization of a fear of death is part of it. The whole original sin thing is part of it.
But when you start the conversation there, really interesting things happen. I mean, when you talk about human beings as part of it, and you apply it to forestry, when you apply it to fisheries, that idea that yes, we need to use resources. We need it for our society, for what we structure and build, but we need to manage it properly. It becomes a very different conversation.
It does, and one of the things that really galls me, having grown up in the country at Winter Harbor on northern Vancouver Island, where it was just fishing and logging, but those fish and those logs were going to the cities for people to eat and build their houses with, and it galls me that city people seem to be able to get into a state of mind where they think those people out there who are digging up the minerals and catching the fish and cutting the trees are the enemy. When they're the ones who are using all the stuff that those people are getting for them. Look around in the city. It's all built. Every single thing here was either mined out of the ground or grown in a forest, and all the food we eat had to be grown on land where there used to be forests, and we've cleared it away. But deforestation is a dirty word. Well, sorry, but Vancouver is deforestation, and so is every cornfield and every potato field. It's not an evil plot.
What's the reaction that you get after this book? Because I mean, that's got to be one of the main questions you get asked. Is you know, coming from probably the signature group when it comes to you know, when people think environmentalism, they think Greenpeace. It's just one of those things. What's the reaction from people been when you start talking about this, you know, sensible environmentalism?
Everyone who's read the book and commented back to me has said they really like it. I've presented it in public many times. I also have a PowerPoint that's complimentary by the same title, Confessions of a Greenpeace Dropout, which is, you know, the main title is meant to get people's attention. But it is about my story in Greenpeace and why I had to leave and what I believe is the correct way to move forward on environment. But Making of a Sensible Environmentalist, the subtitle, is really what the book is about. It's about where we should be going with these many issues of climate change and energy requirements and agriculture and forestry and fisheries and aquaculture. The most craziest thing is the way people in BC have been turned against our own salmon farming industry, which is the biggest agriculture export of the healthiest food in the world and employing people in coastal communities where there isn't much work. And it is one of the best industries. And the fact that 34 million fish came back to the Fraser River and over 1 million fish came back to the Broughton Archipelago, where just 2 years ago these people who are against salmon farming and have turned so many people against it said the fish were going to go extinct.
Well, and Patrick,
they've come back in huge numbers.
When you say it, I know there's people out there that are watching this right now that are like, rah, rah, rah. But when you read the science and you understand the issue instead of just listening to the headlines, once again, it becomes a very different discussion when you say these things.
No one has come back to me with a critique of my book. I'm waiting for it. I want to see it.
You can't argue the science.
Well, sure you can argue the science. I'm waiting for someone to argue the science with me. But I believe that I do have a logical, science-based mind and that I've applied it to these issues with good information. I've kept up with all these issues over the years. I think people who read the book will realize there's another way to look at these things, and maybe they will agree with me on quite a few of the points I make.
Yeah, it's fascinating, and I want to thank you for joining me today. It was a tremendous honor to read the book and a fascinating story. We haven't done justice to the story of Greenpeace as a growth, as a movement, from its very start to what it became as well. So thank you very much for joining.
Thank you, Mike.
Appreciate it. You can pick up Confessions of a Greenpeace Dropout, The Making of a Sensible Environmentalist at your favorite bookstore, and you can go online to Amazon as well. Thank you so much for joining us. We're going to take a break.